Hi, Chris.
Hey,
How you doing?
good. How are you?
I'm good. Before we get started, I just thank you for asking me to do this.
Oh, no problem. Yeah, I mean, I know I've been connected. I've been connected with you on Facebook for a long time, and I didn't. I've been doing interviews for 2 years now. I just didn't think to ask you until now.
I watched some of them, and you're doing a good job. Real
Well,
good
thank you.
job. Yeah, it's going to be something I'll be able to use for myself, and I appreciate that
Yeah.
always. How, first of all, one more thing, how's the audio?
It sounds
Audio
good.
okay? Is it good?
Yeah.
It's the same microphone I use on the radio, so
Oh, okay.
it should sound okay. But I've never heard it on the other end.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm all yours, man.
Okay. Well, of course, I can just jump around then with your career.
Sure.
So, do you still not remember how exactly you got Bob Seger's phone number?
No, I have no idea. I was about 16. I had been they were really exciting years in Detroit. First of all, rock and roll was at its pinnacle. It was the best music scene in the United States, in my humble opinion. You got Motown, and you've got some of the best rock and roll that we ever had. Mitch Ryder and the Detroit Wheels, Bob Seger, Iggy Pop, Ted Nugent, Grand Funk Railroad. I mean, these were all local bands, and so I used to sneak into concerts. I'm pretty sure what happened was I snuck in to one of the theaters and got backstage somehow, which was much easier to do in the 60s.
Mhm.
And I just made friends with all the crew. I was real good about that stuff. I could see what I wanted to accomplish, and I would look around and I'd say, okay, well, how can I accomplish that? Who's going to help me? Probably not the band members. These crew guys, they're working their butts off, man. So let me just make friends with one of them, because they know their way around here, and it's probably what it was.
Okay.
What really escapes me is that I called Bob up the first time, and he was very nice to me. We laughed, and I told him I should be his drummer. He had Jamie Oldacre at the time, bless his heart, he's rest in peace. But Jamie was a great drummer. He went on to play with Eric Clapton
Okay.
on the album Slow Hand. Great drummer. And I don't know who I thought I was, but I was telling Bob, I should be his drummer, and he laughed, and he said, "Well, you take care of yourself, kid." And I hung up. I didn't hear from him, and a week later, I'm going, well, he hasn't called me, Called him up again. He said, "Kid, I don't know how you got my number, but if you call me again, I'm going to find you and I'm going to kick your ass."
Yeah.
And this is what escapes me, because for the next 2 hours, my life was over. I mean, I was devastated beyond belief. I mean, I really had never had any dream of mine just be snapped out of my clutches like that so quickly. But within 2 hours, I had Mitch Ryder's home phone number. And I said, fine, you don't want me, I bet Mitch Ryder will want me. And I called Mitch Ryder up, and I told him the same spiel, that I should be his drummer. And he said, "Is that right? Well, then I guess I better meet you." I said, "You better meet me." Yeah. And the interesting thing was, my dad and I lived in a small apartment complex. It turned out Mitch Ryder lived in the same complex, Farmington, Michigan. And I was at his door in 5 minutes. And we had a good time. And he said, "Well, I'm going to audition you." And he did. And he let me play with him for 6 months before he retired for a while. And it was my start in the business. I wasn't good enough. I wasn't. And some of the band members let him know that. And he said, "Don't mess with my drummer." And he gave me my start. Years later, when I was touring with Rick Springfield, we hit Detroit, and I invited Mitch down, and there's a photograph of me and Mitch and Rick all together. So it was like, two aspects of my career right there in the beginning, and what would probably be the most successful run that I ever had right there together, 10 years apart. Really great stuff.
And this might be obvious, but when you were when your dad gave you the head start to hitchhike, and then when you were hitchhiking to LA, were you ever scared for your life?
Yeah, I was a couple times. Most people that picked me up, I can't remember how many rides. It covered 9 states, and it took 8 days, and I had very little money, of course. And man, yeah, there were a couple of rides where, I didn't know what was good. I got picked up by some strange people, and sometimes they didn't talk, and I would sit there in their car just going, uh-oh, this is weird. This doesn't feel right. But they would drop me off, and it'd be fine, and most of the danger that I really had in my life were the 3 months that I lived in the streets from the time I was 15, the time I was 14, really, until I found my father. My mother had a breakdown. I had to leave home at 14, and I lived in the streets until I found my father a few months later. And there were some moments in that time that it was a lot more dangerous. So I'm really glad that I survived. So are my kids.
Do you remember, like, when you first got to LA, like what the first day was?
Yeah, I do. I was walking up and down Hollywood Boulevard telling everybody I was a drummer, and I was from Mitch Ryder's band, and and that I needed a job. And everybody looked at me like, what's the matter with you, kid? So I met these 2 girls that had an apartment there, and they were from Detroit, and they were older, and they got a kick out of me. They found me amusing, and they let me live in their apartment on their couch. And I lived there for 3 or 4 months while I scrambled to find a gig. And my first gig was a Mexican man named Domingo Zamudio. And he made his fame as Sam the Sham and the Pharaohs.
Yeah.
And they had 2 big hit records. And Sam let me move into his house. I was 17. He loaned me enough money to buy a set of drums. And he would always borrow a car whenever we needed to get someplace. He would borrow a car because he didn't own one either. So those were my first 6-7 months in Hollywood. It was great. I mean, it was perfect. It was great. I loved it. Sam introduced me to everyone that he knew, and he knew some really cool people. It's great. Great time.
I know when you first got involved with Ike and Tina Turner, that was really super daunting.
Amazing gig to get. Sam, we were playing the Whiskey A Go-Go, and everybody came to see Sam. Everybody. I mean, Elton John came. Bette Midler was there. Bernie Taupin was there. Joe Cocker came to see us play, to see Sam the Sham.
Wow.
I mean, I was, I thought he was cool, but I had no idea he was that cool.
Yeah.
But I walked up to Bernie Taupin that night in between shows. We did 2 shows, and I saw Bernie Taupin walking around. And I went, oh, I got to go meet him. And Yellow Brick Road was my favorite album at that time. And Bernie, of course, wrote all the lyrics. And I said, man, I'm a big fan of yours. And he goes, weren't you the drummer in Sam's band? I said, yeah. He goes, can I meet him? I said, yeah, you can meet him. I took him upstairs and Sam, look who wants to meet you. Sam, and he hit it off. And of course, I was living with Sam. And he ended up taking us out to breakfast that night. But backing up a little bit, Sam also told us that night that he was going to quit, go back to Texas and live for a while. So I immediately went into hustle mode because now I need a place to live and a gig. That's always freaked me out, but I always rallied when I got afraid. I don't know what that was about, but it's good survival skills. I looked across the room. I saw a beautiful lady standing across the room. And I just said, why not? I walked up to her and said, hey, I'm Jack. I'm Sam's drummer. And you just saw me play. And, do you know anybody looking for a drummer? She goes, absolutely. I do. As a matter of fact, Ike and Tina are looking. I used to sing with them. The woman I was talking to was Claudia Lanier, who was married to Leon Russell at the time, and had been one of the original Ikettes. She sang on Proud Mary.
Yep.
And so she said, here's the number. Tell them that I sent you. The next morning, I called, and a lady on the other end said, well, I'm sorry, but auditions are over. Well, Claudia Lanier sent me. She said, just a minute. She put me on hold. She comes back. She goes, Ike says if you get down here right now, he'll listen to you, but you'll be the last one. She told me to have a seat in the hallway. And I was the only white person in the room, in the building. In the building. I think that's an important note here, because it sort of gives you an idea of what the mood might have been like, because here's this young white kid that looks like he's about 10, and he's sitting in the lobby waiting his turn to audition, and these drummers that were there in the hallway are looking at me like, you got to be kidding me, you. And I almost left 3 times because some of these guys were so good. And I listened at the door and I just thought, oh man, I can't play like that. And it was a good thing I couldn't play like that, because the way that I played was exactly what he wanted. And I went in, we did a song, and the band leader left the room. Ike and Tina were not in the room, just the band. The band leader rehearsed with me. I think we did Night of 1,000 Dances by Wilson Pickett. He left. He went and he got Ike Turner. Ike Turner comes in the room wearing a black leather trench coat and sunglasses with diamonds around them. And next to him is a guy named Blue wearing a purple matching suit with a matching hat, patent leather shoes. And Ike didn't talk to the band. He talked to Blue, and he'd mumble something. And Blue would say, all right. And he'd tell you what song you were going to play. And I'm checking this out. I'm going, Jesus. And I'm sitting there and I'm scared to death. I'm so scared. I can't even begin to tell you, I've never been that nervous in my life, And I had seen Ike and Tina when I was 15 years old in Detroit, another one of the concerts I snuck into. And it was one of the most powerful R&B bands in history.
Yeah.
I'd say them and Sly and the Family Stone in their prime, in their heyday. 2 greatest R&B bands I ever saw. And so we played a song, and Ike continued to stare at me through these headlights. and I was a little nervous, to say the least. When the song ended, I jumped off my stool and I looked around the room, ignoring him completely. Said, all right, that sounded pretty good. Let's do another one. The room goes dead. And I don't believe that I just said that out loud. And I actually turned and started to pack up my things, and I heard Ike's voice for the first time. All right, play another one. And we played another one, and he left the room, and the band leader called me out in the hallway, and he goes, listen here, Ike says you got the job, but you got to change your attitude. I played with the band for a year. I recorded the last record they ever made as a duo called Baby Get It On. And Tina Turner hotwired my career, at least in my heart, which is the best place for it to get hotwired.
Yeah.
You know? Oh, yeah. Great story.
Did you have any interaction with her later on in your career?
I saw her one more time. Well, I saw her twice, actually.
Okay.
I saw her. She saw me walking down the street. About a year later, she saw me walking down the street. She pulled up in her Mercedes and she rolled down her window and she said, "Jack, is that you?" I walked down. I said, "Wow, Tina, it's so good to see you." And she was very sweet. She was very sweet to me. And we chatted for a little while. She drove off. I didn't see her again until 1981. I was playing the Grammys with Rick Springfield. And we were on stage playing Jesse's Girl for a cast, I want to say an audience, but it was more like a cast of the who's who in the music business.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody was sitting in the front row. They got Stevie Wonder, you got Tina Turner, and that was the next time I saw her and the last time I saw her. So I didn't talk to her that night, though. I went looking for her, but I couldn't find her.
Oh.
That would have been cool. That would have been really cool. I'm sure she would have been really proud to know that she helped me get there, because she did. I always say that, if it wasn't for her being as hard on me as she was, because she was really tough on me. If it wasn't for that, and if it wasn't for her coming back to me like a month after beating me up every day in rehearsal, and figuratively, and saying to me, you weren't good enough to be in this band when you joined, and I kind of I know I really wasn't. Each time I made a step up in my career, I wasn't good enough to get there. I had to fight to stay there. And she said, "Well, I've never seen anybody work so hard. Good job." That was the first night I slept in a month.
Yeah.
Great memory.
Were you more confident then once you got involved with Rick?
Yeah. And Rick and I, I was more confident after that. Sure. Each thing I did gave me more confidence in my life. Everything that I did, every person I met, every chance I got, one step better.
So what's the story of how you got involved playing on Player's first album?
I don't remember exactly who called me. It was an agent at William Morris who called me up and said they knew a guy named Reed Kaling who was putting a band together with some buddies. And I met them at an English pub, and it was J.C. Crowley, Reed Kaling, and Peter Beckett. And we met first. We all got along, had a few beers, had a few laughs. I remember we hung out at the Rainbow Bar and Grill a bunch of times. But when we rehearsed, we hit it off playing as well. So I gave up everything that I was doing at the time to go full bore into playing with this band. And we rehearsed for a long time. And we went in the studio and we cut the first half of the album. And something felt weird. Something felt off about it. There was something going on in the room with the guys, and they weren't talking to me at the sessions anymore. They were sort of going off in the other room and whispering, and I'm going, what's going on here? Well, what it was somebody told them that they were about to sign the record deal, which I'm supposed to be part of, right? But they convinced the guys that they didn't need to sign the drummer. So they signed the record deal without me. And when I found out, I quit.
Yeah.
I quit. I said, I can't believe you treated me like this. I can't believe you're going to. And I made $700 for those sessions. And that's all I got paid for 6 months work. $700. And so they got another drummer to finish the record. And they recorded Baby Come Back. I wasn't there, but I did the first half of the record, the other tracks. And Baby Come Back went to #1. And I thought, wow, I'm going to get a gold record, my first gold record. Yay. I called their management company. I said, well, it's kind of a big deal. I get my first gold record. And I'm thinking, well, at least I'll have that. So I get a call one day. He says, your records came in, so come and get it. I went down there and he goes, that'll be $95, please. I said, what? You're going to charge me for my record? You're going to charge me for my first gold record? It's hanging here on the wall. I wanted to take it down a bunch of times, but every time I look at it, I'm reminded just how self-centered some people can get, and to beware of it.
Mm-hmm.
Always beware of it. And Peter, if you're listening, I'm really sorry. No grudge anymore. I've had a good life. I don't hold any grudges anymore.
What was your opinion at the end of the 70s into the 80s, where what were your thoughts on punk and new wave and that genre of music?
I didn't get it. I didn't get it at first, but I had an old family friend, a keyboard player that I had known since I was 6 years old. He was from Michigan, and he was in a band in Hollywood, and I went to see them at the Troubadour, and I liked the band a lot, but the drummer was horrible. I was going to say horrifying. So it came out horrible. Okay, that could be a word.
Yeah.
No, he was really bad. Sorry, I won't say who it was, but I just went up to him. I said, I should be the drummer in this band. Where did that, wow, I've heard that one before. Seemed to be a theme in my life,
Yeah.
I used that one a lot too. Anyway, so I rehearsed with him and I became the drummer, and we packed clubs all over LA. The record companies were climbing over each other to get to us. We signed with Epic Records for 2 albums. We did 2 albums. They're 2 great records.
Yep.
Gary Myrick and the Figures. Great recordings.
Yep.
Some of the best drum tracks I ever recorded in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And again, Gary, this was another sad case where, the leader of the band, or the guy singing rather, not the leader of the band, because he wasn't the leader of the band. We were all, the bass player and myself were just as much a leader as he was. And we had just as much to do with those songs being crafted the way they were as he did. And, but he got very, he just wanted it all for himself.
Oh.
And so I, again, it was another band I had to quit. I just had to quit. I couldn't do that anymore. After all the work I put in with those guys, trying to make something out of it. When I saw that band and I heard a sound and they weren't getting it with that drummer. And I said, you know what? We need to do it a different way. And we went into rehearsals and I started to reshape those songs
Mm-hmm.
for them, because I had a lot more experience than they did. And Gary never wanted to give me credit for that.
Oh.
It's too bad.
Yeah.
That's okay. A buddy of mine that I'd been playing with a few years before that, I went on tour with him too, but we didn't sell any records, but we vowed to stay in touch with each other. And I kid you not, one day after I quit Gary Myrick and the Figures, I got a phone call from my friend who I stayed in touch with. And he said, I've written some new songs. I want you to come over to my house and listen to them. And I went over to his house. We sat on his living room floor, and he played me this little cassette deck with his demos of what would become Working Class Dog, Rick Springfield. And needless to say, that was a record that, you know, that was a big hit.
Mm-hmm.
We toured the world 3 times over, and I got several gold and platinum records from it. I made a lot of money, bought my first house, and the greatest part of my career, playing drums anyway.
I do know that the Working Class Dog and Success Hasn't Spoiled Me Yet, that having talked to Billy Steinberg too, I know that both him and Tom Kelly worked on it.
Yeah.
Did you get much interaction with them directly?
Tom Kelly was the singer, right?
Yeah.
So when we played the Grammys, and Steinberg, he sang too, right?
He just wrote it.
What did he write? I don't remember.
Oh, he wrote for Success, he wrote Just One Kiss.
Okay. See, I never met him.
Okay.
I wasn't involved in the writing. Rick wrote everything by himself, and that was pretty much, he didn't need any help.
Yeah.
But he took help once in a while like that. Tom Kelly sang on our record, didn't he?
Yeah.
Okay, so the next time, the only time that I had any interaction with Tom was Rick had him sing background vocals at the Grammys because we were playing it live.
Oh.
And Rick wanted the background vocals to be perfect.
Yeah.
So he had those guys backstage behind the curtain singing background.
Wow.
Years later, we would sample background vocals and the keyboard player would play them. So Rick likes his perfection.
I did find a photo of you around that same time, 81, of you guys and Lisa Hartman hanging out together.
Oh, Lisa, my first love, first girl I ever fell in love with. Yeah. I played in her band. I auditioned for her band, and I went and did some shows with her up in Lake Tahoe.
Yep.
At Harrah's, and I fell head over heels for her. She told me not to fall in love with her too. What's the first thing she said to me? Don't fall in love with me. What does that mean? What do you mean? I can't fall in love with you? I'm gonna fall in love with you. I know I am. I can tell you that already. I didn't know anything about girls yet. I really was learning the hard way. I saw her in an airport not too long ago. She's married to Clint Black.
Right.
And I saw her with her daughter in an airport, and we talked. And she was so beautiful. She's still so beautiful. They're sweet too.
Well, I had figured even before seeing that she must have been friends with you guys, since she did a cover of Hole in My Heart on her 82 album.
That happened afterwards. You know what? I'll tell you something. She had a thing for Rick.
Okay.
As soon as I didn't realize this, but I was already playing with Rick in last part of 79, early 80. And I think it was about 81. We were playing the amphitheater. We did seven nights at the amphitheater. It was a great run. It was fun. And Rick said to me in the dressing room one night, he goes, Lisa Hartman's coming down here tonight. I said, really? She is? Wow. And I'm thinking, oh, she'll finally see me in my glory days, I never give up. Anyway, I read an article shortly after that where she said in an interview that she wanted to be the female Rick Springfield.
Oh,
Yeah. So, I don't, yeah, that was her idol at the time.
mhm. And you were friends. I know that Neil Giraldo played on the Working Class Dog album. So were you friends with him and Pat?
Yeah. But I met him years later.
Mhm.
I didn't meet him when he recorded on the record.
Oh, okay.
That was done. That was an overdub that was done after my part was finished. I met him years later when my wife and I were house shopping. We went and looked at their house.
Oh. What are some of your personal favorite songs on Working Class and Success? Those two albums.
Hmm. Well, you know what? Jesse's Girl was always a number. That was always going to be a hit song to me. When I sat down with Rick on his floor that night, you know, he says in his autobiography, I think he says this. If he doesn't, he should have. he said I think he said that I was the first one to know that it was a hit song. But I think he says it another way. I think he says that I am the first one in the rehearsal to say that it was. But actually, he's wrong about that, because I told him in his living room that night that song, that Jesse's Girl thing, that's a hit song. And he said no, he believed it was Hole in My Heart.
Yeah.
And I liked Hole in My Heart. That was a good song. But Jessica I knew that was a hit.
Mhm.
So I think it's kind of cool that I was the first person to know that a song was a hit record. Don't you?
Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I liked everything that we did. For me, I didn't really know what songs I liked until we rehearsed them and took them to the stage.
Okay.
Because for me, it was all about what's the best song to perform. What's the one that makes me feel the best when I'm playing it, And we'd get into those arenas and 30,000 kids would be screaming and carrying on, and you could tell which songs they liked, and they had good taste because those are the same ones I liked.
Yeah. Well, it is interesting because I know that there was a little feature a while ago where Oprah and the people associated with Oprah tried to figure out who Jesse's Girl was written about specifically, and they couldn't find.
It was a fictitious name. All right, I'll set the record clearer. He's done it a million times. I'll do it one more time. He was in a stained glass window class,
Right.
and he saw a girl, and he had a crush on her, found out she had a boyfriend, went home, wrote the song, changed the names because Jesse sang better than Bob or whatever his name was. And that was it. That's all it was.
Yeah. I did think it was cool too that in the music video for Jesse's Girl, that the guy playing Jesse went on to direct the movie Burlesque like decades later.
I didn't know that. Well, it's a funny anecdote on the two videos. I've Done Everything for You and Jesse's Girl. Okay, so we go back now to Gary Myrick and the Figures, and Gary Myrick had a friend who owned a 16 millimeter movie camera, and we made the Gary Myrick and the Figures videos with this guy. What's his name? Oh, he passed away, and I'm so sorry. And he was such a nice guy. I can't think of his name right now, but if I do, I'll bring it up. But no offense to his wife, man. I just have bad memory these years. MTV had not hit yet.
Mm-hmm.
This is a really important part in music history. You see, this is when things were going to change drastically. The invention of MTV, it hits. And when it does, bands started to sell tremendous amount of records fast. We were one of the first bands to be on MTV. Us, Michael Jackson, there's a few others in there, but we were among the first 10, I think. RCA knew that they needed to spring for a budget for a video, but nobody really knew what kind of budget should we do for this. I mean, nobody knew the extent of this new thing and what it would do in the business. So record companies weren't giving bands a lot of money. I think they allowed us something like $10,000. And Rick says to me one day, he goes, how can we make 2 videos for $10,000? And I said, I know a guy. I know how we can do it.
Yeah.
And I called up my friend and I told him the deal. And he goes, yeah, I can do that. I said, we don't have much money. He goes, well, it's okay. We'll make it work. And we needed a place to do the video. He goes, well, I know a guy that owns a strip joint on Melrose Boulevard. So we did the first video inside after the girls stopped dancing. And we did the second video in the alley in the back for Jesse's Girl. And then when we went to New York later that year, we were one of the first bands to do an interview on MTV. And that was the beginning. And then, so those 2 videos cost $8,000, which is unheard of.
Yeah.
Videos today can go as high as $250,000 easy. But most of that's pretty fluff.
Were you anxious to be on American Bandstand?
Yeah. I had been on American Bandstand in 1976 with Rick Springfield the first time.
Yeah.
On the record that we tried to sell, but we couldn't get anybody to buy it. And but we did do American Bandstand in 76. And we did a few songs on there. Old Gangsters Never Die, which is on the album Waiting for Night.
Yep.
Great record. And it's the reason that I auditioned for Rick Springfield. So I was at a rehearsal hall one day, and I walked up to the manager. I said, do you know anybody looking for a drummer? Is there anybody in here auditioning drummers? And he goes, see, there's a guy down the hall, and he's got a really cool album. And he says, this is the album. And he shows it to me, and I turn it over, and it's Nigel Olsson and Dee Murray are playing on it. And I go, you remember, as I said earlier, what was my favorite record growing up there?
Yeah.
Yellow Brick Road, right? Nigel Olsson, Dee Murray.
Right.
I ran down there and opened the door. He's auditioning drummers. I opened the door. I walk in right in the middle of a song, and I'm not even going to wait, and he stops. He tells me to come back later, and I did, and the rest was history. He auditioned a whole bunch of drummers, but he liked me the best. I win.
Yeah. And then when you were playing with Redbone, do you know who Danny Spanos is?
Yeah, the guy that played drums before me, and the guy that was living in that apartment building with those girls and me. And Danny Spanos had recently hitched a ride with somebody to come to Hollywood from Detroit. We were both from Detroit. He knew those girls in Detroit, I think. And he was crashing at their apartment the same time I was. So I went on to play with Redbone. I mean, I went on to play with Sam the Sham, and he went on to play with Redbone. So a few years later, when I joined Redbone, he had been the drummer before me. But I don't think he played with them for very long. That's where Danny comes into my
Well, because I was always, not just me, but a lot of people who are into that genre of music, nobody, there's no info about whatever happened to him.
He passed away.
Oh, he did? Oh, wow.
We've lost a lot of people over the years, way too young.
Yeah. Was that, do you know if that was still in the 80s that he passed?
I don't remember exactly.
Okay.
I didn't keep in touch with him.
Okay.
He didn't get to be part of Breadbone history because he didn't play with them long enough. I played on the last record they ever made. It was Redbone Live.
Yep.
And it was us opening for War in Corpus Christi, Texas. And I think we did 2 or 3 nights there. And we had a mobile truck out behind the theater and recorded us live. Great performances. I think it's one of the best live performances, if not the only one, of Witch Queen of New Orleans, which was one of my favorite records of all time. I mean, Come and Get Your Love is great.
Yeah.
No question. But for the people, see, Redbone, I was a big fan of Redbone when I was living in Detroit. When I was 16, 17 years old, I went to see Redbone. Well, I didn't go to see Redbone. I went to see Badfinger.
Okay.
And Redbone was the opening band. And they came out and they were all American Indians and they did a tribal dance in their Indian outfits. And I'm going, Jesus, what is this? But the drums, Pete DePoe is their drummer, great drummer, just laid it down so funky. And they had this great rhythm thing going on, and it was awesome. And the 2 hit singles that they released in the beginning were regional hits in places like Michigan, and they were Maggie and Witch Queen of New Orleans. I knew those records before I ever heard Come and Get Your Love.
Mm-hmm.
So when I auditioned for Redbone, you're talking about a kid that was a big fan, you know. So I hit the ground running with them. And by this time, I'd had a lot of experience playing in powerful, funky bands. Ike and Tina Turner, Rare Earth, and a couple other bands you wouldn't have heard of, but it was my Detroit coming out in me, and I was the perfect drummer for that band. I was really good in that band.
Yeah.
So if you look Redbone up if you Google Redbone, one of the pictures that comes up right away is a picture of me with them.
Yep.
And I look like it's very 70s.
Yeah.
I'll just put it that way.
Yeah. Well, speaking of touring with people, I know in 1982 that Carla DeVito got to tour with you guys.
I don't know that name.
She was the woman. She sang with Meatloaf, "Paradise by the Dashboard Light," and she had a solo album on it.
You talking about Sean Murphy?
No. Carla DeVito she had a solo album on Epic Records.
Carla Bonoff? Did she go by Carla? No, that's not Carla Bonoff. I never met her.
Okay.
I knew Sean Murphy, who sang with Meatloaf.
Yeah.
She's a very good friend of mine.
Okay.
I stayed in touch. I actually lived in her house with her husband in Detroit when I was 17.
Oh.
And I rented a room in their house for a while. She had just left Meatloaf to have a baby.
Okay, yeah.
But no, I don't know that name.
Well, who are some of the people that toured with you guys in like 81, 82, 83?
You mean opening bands?
Yeah.
With Rick? Opening bands with Rick. Well, the Romantics. I forget the names of the bands. So sorry. I made friends with, Quarter Flash was one. I can see them all, but I don't remember the names of the bands.
Yeah.
And I made friends with a lot of them, and those friendships carried on, but I can't remember the name of some of their bands.
Was the entire time that you were touring with Rick in the 80s, was it all a totally positive experience? Mostly?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I'll say something about opening bands. Back in those days, especially, it wasn't about who would be the best band to open.
Mm-hmm.
It was what record company was going to pay money to the headliner to have their band be the supporting act, because tours are expensive. And so when a headliner would head out on the road, the record company would call the other record companies and they would get bids for some of the bands that they wanted to, promote. And whoever came up with the biggest amount of money got to open for Rick Springfield or Van Halen or whoever it was.
Mhm. So this was going back. Was the way that you got into SAG in terms of acting was some Disney project in '79?
SAG-AFTRA. Yeah, I was recording at Sound City. Some guy that was producing the session came up to me afterwards and he said, you want to audition for a Disney movie? They're looking for musicians. They want to start a band. They want it to be a Disney band. They want it to be like the Monkees. And I like the Monkees, Monkees band, I'll admit it. Snappy tunes, And I auditioned for it. Ron Miller, the president of Disney, who married Walt's daughter.
Yep.
When Disney died, he made Ron Miller president. And Ron is the one who hired me. He's the one who auditioned me and hired me. So I got carried for a few months as a contract player. And I joined SAG-AFTRA. I got the acting bug in 1977. I started taking acting classes back then, and I still have my SAG card to this day. Good thing, because I'm still acting.
Yeah.
And I'm working as a narrator and an announcer on the radio, and I narrate documentaries, things like that. But kind of gave me other things to do over the years.
Mm-hmm.
When one thing would slow down, another thing would pop up. I mean, I remember when the Disney movie ended and acting classes were not being very fruitful. That's when I found out Redbone needed a drummer. So, and when the Redbone thing ended, I went back to acting, and then I met Rick. Rick got into acting. So, and then I got a call one day to be in the movie Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band with the Bee Gees and Peter Frampton.
Yeah.
And that was really cool. And then later on, I was coming off of an acting job, and I got a call in 1985. I got a call from Andy Gibb, and Andy wanted me to play with him. He didn't even want me to audition. He just wanted me. He had seen me play with Rick, and that's all he needed. He just wanted me to come along and play. And I did. I played with Andy for 7 months. And it's kind of sad. I knew that whole family. I knew them all. I knew the brothers, the mother, the father, Andy. Barry's the only one left.
Mm-hmm.
And his sister. I think his sister's left. Nice people. Really nice people.
Was the way that you met Katie through music?
Yeah, it was. I was doing an outdoor festival in Ogura Canyon, and I was playing drums with a band, and I finished playing, packed up my drums, and went up on the stage, sat there to listen to whoever. I heard this incredible voice coming from the stage, and I went up there to see who it was. And I sat on the side of the stage, and this chick was just tearing it up. Oh my God. I don't think there's anybody that can sing like her.
Mm-hmm.
She's got one of the most incredible voices I've ever heard. I mean, you got all kinds of singers these days, but nobody's like her. And I didn't know who she was. I didn't watch TV. So I'd never seen her show. But she walked off the stage, and I really wanted to say something. And I got kind of shy, not like me, but I did. It's okay though, because she walked right up to me and said, "Do I know you?" no, my name's Jack. And she started to leave, and I said, oh, wait a minute. don't leave. Well, listen, I didn't want to ask her for a number. I said, I'm playing at St. Mark's in Redondo Beach Friday night. Would you please come and see me play? And she said, oh, maybe, I'll see. And then she left with some guy in a pickup truck. And I went, and somebody told me who she was. Oh man, she's a big star on TV, married with children. You never saw that? I said, no, but she's an actress on TV, huh? Great. Well, I can pretty much write off seeing her Friday night. Friday night comes around, and I'm up on stage playing in this blues band, and the place is packed, and it's a sea of people, and I can't take my eyes off the door. I know she's going to show up. I just know it. Somewhere down side, I just knew she'd come, and she did. She walked right in the door. She walked right up to the stage. She looked at me and she said, hi, I made it. I have to go now. Bye.
Yeah.
She turned around and she started to leave. I'm like, wow, you can't leave. I said, guys, I'm sorry. I got to go see about a girl. I know that's a line from another movie, but I used it. And I caught her. I put her in a booth. I went up. I finished my set. I went down and we talked all night long. We looked up. The place was empty. They were mopping the floors. All the musicians were gone. The only thing left on the stage was my drums. And I said, wow, I guess I better pack up my drums. And she goes, well, I'll help you. And she did. She helped me pack up my drums, put them in the car. We met for coffee the next day, and we stayed together for 11 years. Mm-hmm. We have 2 beautiful children. Yeah. Great story.
Well, it does, based off seeing your post too, it does look like you guys still have a great relationship.
I love her very much. I will always love her. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So as of more recently, do you primarily try to pursue acting now, or do you still draw?
Yeah. Okay. As a matter of fact, I was studying lines before this interview. Yeah, I love acting. You know, Maverick just came out.
Yep,
I've seen it 3 times already. And you know, I just study what people do. I think Tom Cruise is an incredible movie star, and you know, people like that. I'm in awe of them, just in the same way I was with Tina Turner and Lolly Vegas and Rick Springfield. I love talent, you know. I see people who love their craft and go after it with complete abandon, and it makes me happy. Mm-hmm. And I try to emulate them. That's what I do. I try and emulate them. I'd like to tell you that I come up with some great new ways to approach talent, but I don't. I just copy what I like and try and put a new twist on it. Mm-hmm. Which really isn't a new twist at all. It's just myself. I'm a kid from Detroit. I lived in the streets for a while. It gave me an attitude. I still have an attitude. I still have a bad temper when I see people treat other people badly. It makes me angry. I love deeply, and I feel things deeply. It's a great world we live in. I just think we have to. We all need to chip in here and make this thing better. Mm-hmm. Living in Los Angeles these last couple of years, coming from Nashville and coming back here again, has showed me how selfish people can be. When COVID hit, especially, I think we saw it everywhere, and that is that people just became very intolerant of each other and isolated and self-centered. It really came out. It wasn't pretty. You know, you see it in LA a lot. You know, people just aren't friendly to each other. Not the way they are in Nashville. Just the way it is.
Mhm.
I know you were waiting for me to say something really profound, weren't you?
No.
I lost track. I lost my train of thought, man. I was going to be really profound. I was going to really say something really cool for a second. And then all of a sudden I went blank. I went, ooh, this is going to be a really awkward silence.
Well, it does tie into my final question is always asking, what do you want your legacy to be?
Oh, do you ask other people this question?
It's always my final question. Yeah.
Is it? I can't answer that because I'm not finished yet.
Okay.
I'm not finished writing the part that I'm in right now. I feel like if I answered that question, that I'd be on my final lap, you know, and I'm not. I've got so much more to write yet. And so I want to wait and see before I start answering that question.
Okay.
You know, this has been fun for me. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'll be sure to send it to you once I have it up.
Please. I'll
Okay.
look forward to it. Maybe you can maybe you can edit out my awkward spaces.
Okay.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Have a good rest of your day.
You have a great day.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.